John Montgomery had wanted to go to the World's Fair, which was in Chicago in 1893. He wanted to specifically go to hear Nikola Tesla's lecture on electricity. There was a large congress on electrical invention, and Nikola Tesla, one of the fathers of electricity, was going to be speaking. So he took a train from San Diego to Chicago to go to the World's Fair to see this electrical congress. But upon arriving at Chicago, he learned of an international congress on aerial navigation. Hey, there's these other people in the world that are doing this flying machine stuff. I'm not the only guy. This is amazing. And so he went and introduced himself to people we all know in aviation history. Octave Chanute, Albert Zam, Samuel Langley were there. Octave Chanute was one of the organizers, and he convinced them. He said, hey, I've just gotten off the train from San Diego. I've done some gliding experiments. I'd love to give some lectures at your Congress. Can I come talk at your Congress? And he convinced them enough to say, yes, you can give some lectures. So he gave 2 lectures at that Congress, one on soaring flight by birds, and the other one on his theories about aerodynamics. After that Congress, he discussed flight at length with Chanute at Chanute's house in Chicago. The 2 of them had in mind that flight was something that belonged to humanity. It was humanity's desire to fly. People have wanted to fly for eons. And if someone were to figure that out, yes, they should own the patent on that because they should be credited as the inventor, but they should make it free to everyone to use. It shouldn't be owned as a monopoly by someone. It should be everyone's right to fly. But they recognized that the patent office at the time still believed that heavier than air aircraft were impossible. You couldn't fly in a heavier than air machine. No one's done it. Only lighter than air aircraft could be patented. It's a dilemma. You can't patent something that they're not going to believe is true. So they said, well, we'll wait for patenting, but the time will come. And when the time comes, that person, who's ever the inventor, should make it freely available. Chanute had such an interest in Montgomery that he really wanted to collaborate with Montgomery on glider designs. He wrote to Montgomery many times, even came to San Diego with his family to try to knock on Montgomery's door. But Montgomery had already moved north. He had already taken a teaching position, teaching physics at Mount St. Joseph's College in Alton, California, which is perhaps even more remote than Otay. It's in Northern California. Most people don't even know where Alton is, still, today. He focused on aerodynamics at that time, still trying to figure out the physics of flight, and later returned to Santa Clara College, shown here in the Bay Area, to become a professor of English and mathematics and also physics. Again, the Jesuit fathers at this school were fantastic, some of the best educators in California at the time, and they also had some of the premier laboratories at the time. And if you were Montgomery and you'd have been experimenting in a barn and you came and saw this, you would be, wow, I've finally come to the right place. This is where I can do my science. This is great stuff. So he started investigating. This is Montgomery on the right with one of the fathers on the left doing wireless telegraphy later on as he was a professor. He also kept inventing other things. He invented a gold concentrator, because we're still involved in the gold rush, to take gold out of sands, beach sands. I got a Canadian patent on that one too. And he was so prolific with his invention that the college gave him an honorary doctorate in physics in 1901. This is Montgomery shown on the right with the arrow pointing at him. At the same time he was inventing, there was a lot of logging going on in the area near the Bay Area of old growth redwood trees, very, very large redwood trees. So much logging that the forest was really becoming denuded. The colleges in the area all got together and said we should do something to stop this. And they formed a group called the Sempervirens Club. The Sempervirens is the genus of the redwood tree. They formed a club to save the redwood trees. It's before the Sierra Club. They all went to Sacramento to say, hey, we should do something to stop the growth. We should save some portion of these redwood trees. And they convinced the Sacramento government to set up the state's first park called Big Basin State Park up in the Santa Cruz Mountains to preserve the redwood trees. So he was also an environmentalist, helping on that cause as well. I do want to mention, I'm going to take a little digression. There were other people involved in aviation other than Montgomery in California. I'm going to circle back to Montgomery because he still was very central. But I want to talk a little bit about this dapper man named Park Van Tassel. Park and his wife, Jeanette, were very, very good at trapeze work. They would take a balloon aloft at Golden Gate Park, which was then called San Francisco Central Park. They'd take a balloon aloft and then work the trapeze underneath the balloon for paying customers. People would pay 5 cents to see you walk across a line underneath the balloon. Pretty crazy stuff. Wow. Park was always trying to think of new ways of generating more income for his shows. He said, maybe if I jumped out of the balloon with a parachute, people would pay more money. Great idea. So he hired an assistant named Thomas Baldwin. And Thomas Baldwin did this first, jumping out, not park. And Thomas did that first in 1887. Even Jeanette, his wife, made the first jump by a woman with a parachute in 1887, July 4th, 1887, here in Los Angeles. That's the first woman parachutist that we are aware of in the world. There were people making dirigibles. A classic one was August Grieth's California Eagle, which was probably one of the first dirigibles in America. Very, very large dirigible. It had this girder structure underneath. The way that you would control this dirigible, it had very, very poorly designed propellers. The propellers were essentially boat propellers that were taken and put on a dirigible, the same kind of shape. Aerial screws, if you will, because that's the best we can do. Almost like a ceiling fan trying to approach. And then to make the dirigible go up, you would walk yourself back on the girder, and to make the dirigible go down, you'd walk yourself forward on the girder. The girder was nothing much more than just a girder. You're up hundreds of feet, and you're walking on this girder back and forth. A little crazy. One of the people that Grieth hired to be his balloonist was Baldwin, shown here on the right. This is Thomas Baldwin. Baldwin himself he was a very shrewd person, a very shrewd opportunist, and he recognized right away that this dirigible stuff was a moneymaker. He could go around the nation with dirigibles on a big tour and make a lot of money, because people would pay a lot of money to see a dirigible fly. That would be the first thing they'd ever seen fly. That was an amazing thing. But these propeller designs that these folks were using were terrible. In the Bay Area, though, people knew that Montgomery had experimented with aerodynamics. And so Thomas Baldwin sought out Montgomery at Santa Clara College to help design better propellers for dirigibles. And together they worked for a series of months with Montgomery instructing Baldwin on propeller design and aerodynamics, and they came together with a very optimized propeller design for his dirigible. At the same time, Baldwin proposed a new contract. He said, you know what, you've got these gliders. I know you've got this glider stuff. Why don't we take a glider underneath the balloon? We'll take it aloft to thousands of feet. You can release in the glider and land at some prescribed location, and the balloon will fly off. That's fine, but people would pay a lot of money to see you land in a glider. More money than trapeze artists or parachuting. And Montgomery said, that'd be great. So they signed a contract. Baldwin would build a balloon, Montgomery would build the glider, and they would go on a national tour. And it was the first time in Montgomery's life that he actually had a paying gig in aviation. I'm going to make money. This is great. I don't have to do this physics stuff anymore. I can do my love, aviation. But immediately after that contract, Baldwin went to Los Angeles, developed his own dirigible called the California Aero, took that dirigible to St. Louis, and competed in the 1904 World's Fair. He won the World's Fair with his pilot, Roy Nabishu. He won for the greatest distance flown and collected a $100,000 prize, which in 1904 was a lot of money. Unbeknownst to Montgomery. Montgomery read about it in the newspaper. What's this Baldwin guy doing in St. Louis winning prizes? He's supposed to be working on my balloon. He's breaking the contract. Montgomery sued Baldwin. Baldwin countersued Montgomery. Big contract dispute. And as a part of that, Montgomery said, you know what? I'm so fed up with this Baldwin guy. I'm just going to go out and get a balloon. We're going to build gliders, and we're going to show Baldwin we could do it ourselves. We don't need the Baldwin guy.